Hello, hello. How are we today? Exciting to connect with people. I am new. New, how are you? Annie, welcome. Where are you from? Veronica, Ronique, and Annie from Canada. Great. Nice to connect with you. And from France. Wow. The wonders of Zoom. Ronique is in Paris. I'm just outside of Boston. So we're still in the summer cycle. But let's get started. All right. So, welcome to the BG5 Career and Business Cycles certification. So, this is a webinar to help us understand what cycles are, how they work, and if this is a class that would be interesting for you. Before we start, little something about me. I started learning about human design 20 years ago this fall. So, in 2005, if you can believe it. So I have been working with, teaching, seeing clients, coaching on and off for the past 20 years. So it's been really exciting. I come back. I was one of the original teachers in the IHDS when BG5 started out there. And then just recently, I came back to teach BG5 in the BG5 Institute. So really excited to be back. Excited. I had this really epiphany this morning where I I just thought to myself, teaching is such an amazing thing in the sense that when you start to become a teacher, so this is my experience personally, is your learning begins to accelerate at a rapid rate. So since I've been back, and I thought and felt like I knew a lot about human design, but in the past couple of years teaching, I've just discovered that my learning has just been going off the chart. So cycles is something I studied a number of years ago and come back to it and looking at it through the lens of career design. And so that's been really exciting for me. And again, just learning so much about it. So this particular area of BG5 and human design puts a lot of our life in context. So the experiences that you have, whether they're really good or really bad, bad is a relative term, but it helps you understand why was I going through that? Why was that part of my life so hard? And when we start to look at our cycles, we can begin to understand that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take us through a little bit of theory just to give us a grounding about what is this concept called cycles, how does it work? And then we have some practical uh, areas that we're going to look at. So someone wrote in and she said, "Hey, you want to use my chart?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so she generously donated her design for us to look at and explore. So let me start our slideshow here. Here, oh, did the wrong sharing. Let's go back. All right, here we go. When you think about cycles, whether it's daily or annually or at a big like 30, 40, 50 year kind of weather, this is the influences that we feel mostly energetically. We can feel it in your body, especially if you're sensitive enough. But this is Ra talked about it in terms of the weather that we all experience. Here's the secret. If you understand what the weather is bringing, you are so much more able to adapt to it. So in BG5 cycles, what we're talking about when we're looking at the cycles is the weather. That's the background frequency that is impacting us. You can feel it as an energetic kind of presence, whether either in your mind or in your body. We can see the weather on a map and compare that map to our career design map. So I'm going to be showing you that in a little bit. How someone is going to operate within that weather pattern is totally determined by whether they are operating correctly or not. This is a concept I developed when I started teaching it this year. It's called alignment coaching. So we're going to start to look at the weather, and I developed a simple coaching framework for us to understand, okay, I'm feeling all these things, either my mind's really busy or my emotions are going out of control. How do I come back into alignment? So I'll show you a little bit of that in an exercise we'll see in a little bit. There's no middle ground. Either you're getting washed by the tides, the weather, you're getting drenched, or you're really, okay, this is something that is I'm experiencing, but it's actually not who I am. It's not my design. So that's the concept of there's no middle ground. So that's why it's so important to reinforce someone's decision-making strategy in cycle analysis. So decision making is bringing us back into our inner authority. Think of that also in terms of understanding your design, because once you understand your design at a deeper level, you can also discern and notice this is not my design. So you're kind of thinking about this in different levels. If you have questions, by the way, you can raise your hand or put it in the chats, and I'll pause every once in a while to check in any questions. So this is Ra. So if you don't know who this gentleman is, he was the founder of Human Design. So he started bringing this into the world, and I think it was around in the 1980s, 1987, 1988, kind of around that time of the harmonic convergence. And Rob passed away in 2011, so he's been gone for a while, but his legacy lives on. Uh, he was a dynamic teacher. So I was one of those lucky ones who got to participate in classes and listen to his teaching. He was a really powerful orator. He had a really unique design that was really gifted at bringing human design into the world in a really powerful way. So this is what he has to say about the weather, the conditioning. So it's not about eliminating conditioning, it's about eliminating the ignorance of the conditioning. So another way to say this is the weather's happening, all these kind of energetic forces are at play in and around us, but we don't have to be at the mercy of it. You see, any center or function that is open in you is your opportunity for wisdom. So we're going to see shortly that there's times when we have our natal design, our core design, that the transits will activate or define some of our open functions. This is where we begin to feel that conditioning. Hey, what's going on? My emotions aren't usually this sensitive. Why do I suddenly feel this way? So Ragazan said, this is your opportunity through that filtering process that once you stop identifying with what's moving through you, you can take advantage of that, what's moving through. So I'll give you some more concrete understanding of what that actually means in a bit. So now I want you to switch your perspective. So now put your mindset into, okay, I've actually gone through this course with Mike. He's taught me all these things. Now I get to actually go out and help clients. So we're thinking about this now in terms of either a coach, consultants, whatever role that you want to take on. So this can be really powerful if you're working with someone, especially long term. Let's say you're doing a 6-month coaching agreement with your clients. You could literally tell them week by week, month by month, this is what you specifically should be expecting. And so when you feel this, both in yourself, also in the environment around you, you understand that this is conditioning happening. This is very specific information that we're giving our clients. There's different ways that I use this. And again, I'm going to talk about it in different ways, but there are periods of our life where these big things happen, but there's also the day to day. So so right now I'm in my office. My home is really close by. So I live about 5-10 minutes away. But I'll often notice that certain days, just when I'm making the 10-minute drive to the office, certain days, like people are frenetic. Now I live just outside of Boston. So I live in a small city just south of Boston. And so it kind of has that city feel, but it's not quite downtown Boston. And there's some days that people are so frenetic. And then I'll go in and I'll look at the transits and think, oh, this makes sense. And you can actually see the people around you going through these intense experiences, but they're doing it essentially blindly. So when we can help our clients, hey, look, there's some special weather coming for you. I want you to be aware of it. Here's what you may feel when you notice this. Just think of it in terms of this is just chemistry. This is just a dynamic. There's nothing wrong with you. When I've done that for clients in the past, you can literally see their shoulders. It's like they drop, like, oh, okay. Mike was telling me about this. No big deal. Let me just check in, see if there's any questions. Uh, okay. Sarah's here. She's helping out. All right. So what's in it for them, our clients? Often what you are really sharing with your client is what they will see in the people around them. So that's what we're talking about here. Excuse me for one sec. Okay, we're good. When you share the environment, the weather, and the backdrop for their experience, again, this is going to be more concrete in a few minutes. If you don't know what this means at all, I will ground it in some theory and through the application. Then you can share specifically what's in it for them. Again, you're going to see this, but it always ultimately comes down to their decision-making strategy to know if any of this is correct for them and not. Essentially what we're trying to do, again, when you hear that word decision-making strategy, again, that's your inner authority. It's how you process, it's how you make sense, it's how you guide yourself through life. But it's also the gestalt of understanding your design from a holistic perspective. That's part of our job as coaches, consultants, to help our clients see that, understand that. It's easy to get in our heads and allow our minds to manipulate decision making, trying to align or make something happen on a specific date or a specific way. Never, never, never underestimate the power of our not self mind, or I like to use the terminology shadow patterns. It's so easy for us to get pulled off track. So, one of the things that I experienced in my life was relatively recently. So it was around 2018 when my life began to really, really shift. And I knew that that was around the time of my Chiron. So the Chiron is the 50-year milestone. And so when that happened, things just kind of went off the rails. And I was very grounded and understood human design. So I understood that what was happening to me wasn't coming out of the blue. This was really the beginning of a major growth pattern in my life. It didn't make it any easier, but it was helpful to know. It was helpful to know. Kristen, question. Okay, why don't you type it in? And Sarah, you can let me know when the question comes up. Oh, let's see. So I like to be interactive. Oh, sorry, no question now. Okay, let's go. So this last little phrase, I like these little phrases that sound so simple, but man, they can be really big at the same time. Things happen when they happen. Things happen when they happen, which to me meant that I had two major shifting points in my life. One was the Saturn, which is about the 30 year, and the other one was the 50. So at those time frames in my life, I was kind of happily going through my life, moving in a certain direction. Both times as it was if like I was on these train tracks and the train just jumped off the tracks. Everything after that. So before that, I was going one way and I felt like I was a certain person. After that, I felt like I was a completely different person and my life completely changed in its trajectory. Both times, hard to experience, ultimately led to huge inner growth. Things happen when they happen. So, if you are someone who, or you have a client who really likes to be in control of your life, all the different parts, you don't feel safe unless you're totally 100% in control, I have bad news for you. There is just going to be times in your life when you do not have total control of it because that essentially my going off the rails only now at this point in my life do I realize that was very important for my life path. I can see now why I had to go through those experiences and what it led to. But that's, of course, only in hindsight. While it was happening, it was brutal. But afterwards, the growth that happened was astounding. So things happen when they happen. One of the things, again, I'm kind of jibing on this theme here, is this idea that when we go off the rails, when life doesn't sort of match our expectations, we often think there's something wrong with me. I did something wrong. Maybe I had bad karma. Maybe I just, maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. Oftentimes, it's just that's our life path. Ra had this phrase that when I first heard it, I was vis- like viscerally angry about it. And he used to talk about this concept, no choice. No choice. And what I've taken that concept to mean is, again, like I've been talking about, our life is on a trajectory. Now, think about this in terms of like the slide here we're talking about. When we can actually look at our client and their design, we can look at, depending on where they are in their career, where they are in their life, we can look at different phases. What was before, what's coming now, and then what's coming in the future, so we can actually prepare them for it. I have a friend who he just went through his Chiron a couple of years ago. I looked at his Chiron before it was there. And I said to him really kind of simply, I said, when you hit 50, there's going to be some big changes in your life. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. He just thought it's kind of like, yeah, that's hokey. Mike does this thing called human design. Like, what's the big deal? His life altered completely. But I couldn't say any of that. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that he was in for some big change. I had no idea the level of change that was going to show up in his life. Of course, we're not soothsayers. We don't predict the future, but we can predict the themes. We can see the themes. It's a better word than prediction. All right, let me just check in. Any questions here? Just to see. No questions for me. Alignment coaching. This is something that we are going to be working with in our cycles class. Essentially, let me tell you what it is really simply, is we look at the daily transits and we begin to understand the weather and we look at it in terms of our design. So we first start with ourselves and it's about bringing us back into alignment with our design, or if we're doing this with our clients, we do it for them. So I'm going to give an example in a few minutes with this. We can also, when we're working with someone, so within cycles, we can do a number of different coaching packages or career design cycle sessions. One is we can do, if we're working with someone long term, we have a coaching package. we can bring in those cycles so we can help our clients week to week, month to month. We can also do annual cycles, which every year, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes too, every year we go through a new cycle. We actually can map that. We call it the annual cycle return, the annual analysis. So we look at the themes that you're going to experience for the next year. We also look at the big picture, which is the 30, 40, 50, and 60 year. We call them milestones. So there's a lot that we can offer from this one class to use with our clients. So again, if we're looking at ROI, return on investment, so the return on investment is, the class is roughly $1,400, which may sound like a little or a lot, but with just a few sessions with clients, you can easily earn that back because there's so many things, so many ways that you can work with the clients with this one particular class. So this is one of the things I really like about this. All right, let me teach you a little bit about the weather patterns. So this is today. This is right now. So this is the weather that's happening at this very moment. No matter where you are in the world, this is the weather for you. So you'll notice, let me just orient you to this chart. You'll notice that it's only black, so it's only the personality. So the transits create its own design moment to moment throughout the day in and day out. So Ra had this ability to create these charts, create these kind of transit designs, and to see what the influence is for us. So we're going to notice that now every day it's different. Every day it's different, but there can be themes that carry over from day to day. So right now, we'll notice that we have two strengths defined in the transit, 6447 from head to ajna, inspiration to conceptualization, and from survival instinct to the throat, communication action, we have the 5720. So you begin to ask yourself, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for everyone around me? Those two questions can be really powerful. When we're thinking about what does it mean for everyone around us, you begin to look out into the world and notice, okay, this is a transit. What am I noticing? How people are acting, how they're talking, how they're interacting with one another. And then you begin to see the transits in action through other people's behavior. This is fascinating stuff. Okay, so here I'm going to give you a quick overview. This is how we look at the daily transits. So we're not going to go too much into depth with this, but just give you. So we start with the line quality, or if you're familiar with human design, the profile. So we look at the public role. So today, the public role on the personality side is the 2. So we call this a second line day. So actually, in the transits, we go through the core essence, core grounding, conscious core essence, conscious grounding, or sun earth. That'll stay in the transit for 6 days. So every 24 hours, the sun goes around the earth. The earth goes around the sun. And so we have also this transit at 24 hours we'll have. But the line quality, the public role or the profile, starts off with line quality 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the next iteration of sun and earth, core essence, and grounding come in. So today we're in the second line quality. So the traits, what this means is the themes of this second line are harmony, natural talent, being playful, being called out, fulfilling projections. Let me just break that down a little bit. So today, if you feel like harmony, you just want to kind of hang in, you don't want to be social, you just want to work on things that feel really good for you, that's very normal for you. You can feel really playful, like this, we have some new energy, let's kind of go with it. You also may find people are reaching in and saying, "Hey, come on, let's do a project. Let's go take a walk. Let's go do something." And the other thing is, if you are a 2-4 or 2-5 or a 5-2 or a 6-2, you know what it's like to have people projecting onto you. So my public role is a 2-4, or my profile is a 2-4. So what I've noticed over the years is people will project onto me, "Oh my God, Mike is so amazing at this. We have to have him help us do this," or he has to, be a part of our organization or part of something. And what happens is for the two is you have these natural gifts and talents that other people can see really clearly within you, and they want to enlist your help. Any two will notice this experience. So, but the theme, the energy for on the second line days is you may feel that even if you don't have a two in your public role. Here are some of the themes, the overall general themes that we're working with. So the theme of being mentally preoccupied. So this is the 64 confusion and 63 doubt. So this is both core-essence and grounding. The mental field these two traits form a field that can contain confusion and doubt. If you feel like this for this week, feel like I need to make sense of my life, I need to make sense of this relationship, I need to make sense of my work, and I have to do it now, that's really part of the transits for you. So if you feel like this, I need to figure something out, that's not you. That's not you, unless you have the 63 and 64. So we have the whole strength, the 64-47 abstraction. This transit can mentally focus on trying to make sense of the past. So again, if you find yourself reminiscing or going over and over and over something, that's the transit in action. Let me show you this dynamic. So this is true for any design. If you're working with a client, when you see the inspiration and conceptualization connected to one another, but not connected to the communication, we have what's called mental looping. You go over and over and over the same thing, trying to figure it out. I have seen this so many times in people's design. I actually had a client once, and I said to her, like, "Look, this is the dynamic part of your design." She had these two reactions. One was she was so upset, like, "Yes." And she was also relieved that someone diagnosed it. Someone said, "Hey, this is just part of your design. There's nothing wrong with you." So there's this whole part of this dynamic. So if you find yourself in the next week doing this, there's a reason behind it. And just try to take yourself out of that kind of energy. Remember that just chemistry. It's not you going crazy, and there's nothing for you to have to figure out. The other is the strength of the 5720, contemplation. The 57 is incredibly powerful. The intuition is like, it's like the deepest intuitive part of any design. Very penetrating. So with this particular transit, this transit can bring the penetrating awareness of intuition shared in the moment. Don't be fooled by how simple that statement is. If you know a 5720, if you are a 5720, if you have this in your design, you know that what you see so clearly in someone can really rock someone's world. The 5720 is part of individuality. It's part of the individual circuitry, thematic. So it brings mutation. So if you find yourself being more intuitive today, let's say you have the 57 without the 20, you suddenly have this voice that is able to share your intuitions really more clearly in the moment. So in some ways it can be helpful depending on your design. But be careful with your intuition. Again, if you have this or know of this, or know someone with it, this kind of intuition, when shared, is best done in the right timing because literally it has the capacity to change someone's life, how they see themselves, how they see someone, how their direction. It's kind of fascinating. So this is now in the air. This is all kind of around us. This is happening. Now look at the color coding here. So the green is kind of matched here. So the core essence, this is the gate of the trait of confusion. The line quality is qualification. This is about inner development that can end the confusion over what makes sense. This can be a day where you suddenly begin to understand things that didn't make sense before. With the 63 doubts structuring, this is what's grounding us. The pressure to share one's doubts with others while still maintaining control. When you're in a place of doubt, which is basically, I don't understand this, you can feel in some ways out of control. When you share it with another, the fact of verbalizing it can help you feel more in control. So that's the theme for right now. With the 41, this is the moon. This is our driving force. It's in trait 41, the dreamer. The line quality is caution. Energy for one's own feelings, but not others. This is about desire. If you notice, you just feel this drive to do something new. Number one, I would say pause. Don't jump into anything. This driving force can push you, pull you into some new experiences. Take a time out on that. Don't jump into anything really big right now. Wait for now the moon's cycle is every 11 to 12 hours. So I'm not sure when will be ending, but sometime tonight it's going to move into the next. So if don't jump into anything really big today because you may be pulled by the moon, which is again is our driving force. And we're looking at the reds. This is the nodes or the past and future direction. Past is the lower one, and the future is the upper one. And so the 47, that's the realization. It's 47, ambition, realization. Realizing that to be busy is mentally healthy. And with the 22, openness, charm school, the possibility to attract others with an emotional style. The 22 has a really specific kind of frequency. I find that especially the 12, 22, it's kind of warm, inviting energy. I also have the 12 and the 55, so I have a little bit of that whole sort of circuitry there. All right, so this is just today's weather. This is just today's weather. So what we did is we just went through and just began to understand, okay, this is what everyone, including me, you, is experiencing. Now we're going to look at it in terms of Kristen. So Kristen is from Norway. She gave me permission to look at her design. Now we're looking at the transits in terms of specifically her design. Here's the simplest thing. When you do this for yourself, here's what you're going to be looking for. So you look at your design. Kristen has 2 strengths, 3 functions defined. The core of her design lies right smack dab in the middle. Everything else around it is open. Three functions defined, 6 open. I consider that a lot. If you have 5, 6, 7 or more functions open, you are someone who can feel the weather. You're like the boat on the waves. Sometimes it goes smooth, but depending on even just being in crowds, the more functions you have open, the more sensitive you are. That's kind of a rule of thumb. So the circles, so you'll notice here in the blue, so she has her whole head, ajna, conceptualization open, throat, communication open, survival instincts, intuitive awareness open. But in the transits, they are defined. That's going to put a pressure on Kristen. That's going to activate her potential shadow patterns. Those will activate her shadow patterns. Here, I'm just going to show you, these are the shadow patterns for each of the 9 functions. So anytime they get activated, anytime the transit activates or defines one of your open functions, you can feel or notice these particular shadow patterns. So we look at this much more in depth in the class, but I just wanted to give you a sense. So just really quickly, these are some of the themes that Kristen would be dealing with: survival instincts, inspiration, conceptualization, communication. Oh, and by the way, emotions. So 5, that's a lot. That's a lot. Lack of flexibility, holding on to things too long, losing focus, overcomplicating things, um, being touchy and nervous. These are all things that Kristen may be experiencing just through these transits. So it's her job to take time throughout her day to notice, oh, there's that thing Mike was talking about. I'm overcomplicated. I'm overthinking. I'm losing focus. I feel jumpy. That's the transits in action. It's not you. So my phrase that I use a lot of times for myself, oh, this is just chemistry, just energy running through my body. I'm feeling activated, but it's not actually me. It's not my design. Here's the alignment coaching in action. Okay, so what I'm looking for is just, so what you're looking at here is on the left side is Kristen's design, on the right is the transit. You'll see that the green is her design and the blue is the transit. So when you look at the chart in the middle, it's kind of represents a relationship. It's Kristen's relationship with the daily transits. Blue is the transit, green is her design. And then you can see through this how it's influencing her. So you can actually look at this design and actually you could give a reading about it, career design session. I'm going to stay simple on the surface because that's what I like to do. When I used to talk about simple being on the surface, like the simplest concept of design could be the most powerful. So Kristen went from 3 functions defined to now having 8 functions defined. So she's feeling this energy amped up all over, all through her. That's the reason why. So we talked about the mental looping. So this is the first thing that she needs to be aware of. If she's finding herself, I need to make sense of my thoughts and my life and my, this thing that I'm doing, this project, this relationship, that's the mental looping, going over and over and over things. I actually found myself doing that this morning. And I didn't even catch myself. I knew that this was a transit. I didn't catch myself. That's how hard it is. I knew it, and I forgot about it. So, Kristen, just notice, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Potential time of deep and sudden insights. That's the 57 that I was talking about. So right over here, that blue line. So that can be beneficial. You may not have that in your design, but you might feel this intuition being activated. It also means not all transits are bad. Sometimes we can use it as a wave and we just surf the wave. And it gets really cool in that way. Clients, so here's what I'm also going to do. We're going to also come back to Kristen's core design, which is really kind of fascinating for me. So you'll see here, Kristen has in her core essence grounding is the 13 and the 7. It's right here. It's in the identity function. And a channel gets formed here, a strength. So these are called role traits. They're leadership traits. they can play a really powerful part of someone's design. 13 is about listening. 7 is about leadership. Third line quality. So there's a lot of trial and error. So Kristen is someone who has the capacity to listen like no one else. People tell her secrets. They're excited to unload their deepest burdens. Kristen probably has been hearing all her life people's deepest secrets. She also has the capacity to hear not only what people say, but what's not being said. And wonderfully, this corresponds with 7, which is leadership. 7s, anytime you see a 7 in someone's design, you know that they have been leaders in one form or another all of their life. It's one of the most natural leadership roles and traits in design. Doesn't mean you're a good leader, but it means that people see you as a leader. So in Kristen's life, she probably got a lot of leadership opportunities, and a lot of those leadership opportunities, she made a lot of mistakes in. That's part of the trial and error process of the third line quality profile, public role. Her mistakes are nothing but really great learning opportunities. So when she comes back to that, that grounds her. So less talking, more listening shifts her whole frequency. When she's in the listening mode, it's like, man, it's a frequency that people like, I just want to tell her everything. We're just looking at one of the simplest places in her design. We're beginning to see how she operates. So if she's a chatterbox today, chatter, it's like, hey, come back to what grounds you. And so one of those things is just being in more receptive mode. Allow people to come to you. People will come to her for very specific things that we can see in her design. Let's continue. So when I'm doing career design sessions, you don't have to go really deep. You just have to see. I'll often ask myself when I'm working with clients, number one, what's their profession? What do they do? How are they designed to help people? How are they designed to do their work? So for Kristen, she has 2 strengths, 2551, from willpower to identity, and from identity down to energy resource, which is the 214. Incredibly powerful. Kristen has the capacity to initiate people into new ways of seeing themselves, new ways of doing things, new ways of operating. And she also has the capacity to help people move in new directions. She doesn't have to say anything. It's part of her leadership style. She can just be in the room. She can be saying nothing. And then the team, the people around her are suddenly making these breakthroughs. This is her design. But in order for Kristen to live her design, she needs to be in alignment with when a new direction comes, you need to go for it. If your gut says this is the right direction and you don't take it, you're now off kilter. You're not getting the chance to go through the initiation you need to. So in order for Kristen to be really effective in her work, she needs to be in alignment with her design. She needs to listen to people. She needs to take those leadership roles when they come, because the people who she's going to be leading need to be moved in a new direction. So we're kind of weaving the threads of her design, and we're beginning to understand how she operates. This is what brings her into alignment. If she's in her head processing, she can't hear the impulse to move in a new direction or to jump at this new opportunity. This is alignment coaching. This is how alignment coaching works. We look at the transits, we look at what's pulling her off track, and we say, hey, if you if you fall into this trap over and over and over, day in and day out, you'll miss these opportunities to follow where your design is leading you to go. Can you see how specific this is, this kind of coaching? There's no coaching in the world that could do this, what we're talking about right now. This is like futuristic. And I'm not even going that deep into her design. I'm just looking at a few core places. So here's what we've done so far. We looked at the daily transit. We looked at in the relationship between the transit and Kristen's design. And then we looked at her design to say, okay, what's the potential fallout if she gets too caught up in the weather? We could also call it the drama. Kristen has an incredibly powerful trajectory in life. But not only that, her trajectory is really specifically designed to also help people move in new directions. There are people waiting in her fractal to say, I need to break out of this funk. I need to break out of this place that I've been stuck in. She is ideally suited to do that. Don't get jealous of her design, by the way. I could do this for you, and I could spin a story, not spin a story. I could create a story that's equally amazing, but it fits you. This just fits Kristen. Can you tell that I really like design? I just love it. It's just so powerful. Okay. I don't want to, sometimes I can go down these deep rabbit holes. Also, it's emotionality. So anytime you see someone with an open emotional system, open emotional intelligence, and the transit, one way or another, defines that, you now know that this person is now experiencing a heightened level of emotions. Heightened level of emotions. For Kristen, what she needs to be on the lookout for is jumping into intimate relationships. See, the 59 is the transit, but she has the 6 in her emotional intelligence. It creates the strength of interaction, but in everyday terms, it's about intimacy and it's also about sexuality. So if you're feeling this pull towards someone in particular, that's another way to put on the brakes, like, you got to be a little discerning during these times, Kristen. I'm being a little playful, but it's also like it's a real deal. You need to be aware of it. The shadow pattern awareness is those 5 functions: mental looping, talking too much, holding on to things too long, touchy and nervous. Those are the simple keynotes. So, Kristen, this is what you need to be aware of in this kind of time frame, essentially this week. Just be aware of that all playing out. Kristen, you are so lucky. You get the whole kit and caboodle. Let me give you a sense of the annual cycle. Again, obviously, I'm not going to go too deep into this. Here's what I want you to see really quickly. Again, we look at the natal chart, and this is the annual return for Kristen. So I actually looked at the coming year. So I don't have the specific dates, but I'm pretty sure that, well, let me look. So Kristen's, excuse me, Kristen's annual return begins next February. So that her birth date is February 4th. So, but the solar return, the energy for the next year actually starts 3 months before. So on November 9th, that's when the new energy begins. So the old cycle ends just before November 9th, and the new cycle begins to slowly ramp up. So Kristen's going to start to feel this new energy showing up. So I'm just doing this on a kind of a general level. So you'll notice that the core essence and groundings in her natal design stays the same in her solar return. So we never lose that part, but everything below it has essentially, it's not a new design. Think about it as like, here's your design, and you kind of overlay another design on top of it. That's kind of how when we look at these cycles. So we're going to lay over some new themes. So we can see down here, there's places that she gets compromised. There's places where she's going to meet people. That's the personal connection. There's also educational channels. Those represent learning themes for her coming year. And these are the channels, the strengths that she already has. The compromise is interesting. These are places where she can feel like there's some, it's both a learning theme, but it can also be a place that's a challenging learning theme. So community, recognition, which is about desire for new experiences, and the 1/8 is creative inspiration. So these may be some challenging learning opportunities for Kristen. These are some of the themes. So a lot's happening for her in this coming year. So again, it's going to start ramping up through the holidays, the winter holidays, and really begin to take off in February. In February. She'll have the whole 64-47. So for the next year, she's going to really be focused on the past. That's a learning theme for her. Don't get too lost in the past. If you find yourself reminiscing, you're going over and over and over and over things, that's a signpost. You're just come back, bring it in. Synthesis 49-19, very tribal, looking for support, looking for connection, looking for relationships, looking to, get your needs fulfilled. So so Kristen, if you've been sort of putting yourself in second place or taking care of other people's needs without getting your needs taken care of, this year is the time for you to course correct that. Again, this is really simple. I just did this super fast, but we can look at and see some of the themes that are coming her way. Yeah. I just see if there's any questions for me. All right. So we're near the end. We're kind of wrapping up here. We're not going to go too much into this, but I talked about this in the beginning of our webinar. There are also these milestones. There's 4 milestones, but the 3 core ones are 30, 40, and 50. And then 60 is kind of like the final big one. But at that point, ideally, you're on track. You understand your design. You're in a place in your life that when you reach that 60-year milestone, you've gone through the original earlier cycles and really begin to get comfortable with yourself. If you know design, you understand how your design works. And so that begins the sort of the next and final part of your life. So I'm going to do this really quickly. I don't want to go too much beyond the hour. What cycles are explored? So exploring the largest theme cycles. The Saturn, just so you know, it starts at 30, goes through 50. So the frequencies that begin at that 30-year milestone will last with you for 20 years. But the biggest part is in the first 5 to 7 years. And then at 40, we begin a new one. So any one of these 30, 40, or 50, you may have kind of relatively mild ones or really big shakeups. For me, it was 30 and 50, and the 40 was no big deal for me. It's like, yeah, great, I'm on this trajectory. And it just felt like, yeah, I'm just doing my thing. 30 can be so powerful because Rod talked about this theme where it's really for us with this the way that human design looks at the life frame instead of being a 30-year life cycle, what like was a couple hundred years ago. Now we're more in this 84-year milestone. We're thinking in terms of 80 plus years is now becoming the norm. So 30 is really in this kind of dynamic, this framework is the sort of the finishing of childhood and the beginning of adulthood. So even when you hear psychologists, they'll actually talk about adolescence continuing into your 20s. You're still learning, your brain's still forming. So it's not till 30 when you begin to really feel like I'm an adult. My secret is I didn't actually start feeling like I was an adult until I was well into my 40s. I still felt so young. And I thought there was like this secret, like everyone around me seemed so adult. Now I've always been emotionally intelligent, but in some ways I still feel incredibly young. So if you have that experience, number one, good for you. And two, there's nothing wrong. The Chiron and the second Saturn is they can be major themes, major changing points. They can be especially big for men who traditionally, and this is a generalization, men traditionally have been they go to work, they don't feel their emotions, they don't get to go deep into this. They just need to power through life, make a lot of money, provide for the family. That's been the traditional role. I'm not saying it's always been like that or it's like for everyone, and I know it's changing. But what happens is a lot of men will reach this stage of life and realize, I don't know who I am. I have no idea how my emotions work. Feelings, like what is that? So if you're a man who is studying this material, one of the things, and I'm not saying women can't do this, but sometimes men to men can be really powerful in the sense that you're helping men come back to themselves. Women, if you're really called to work with men in this way, you can be a wonderful role model because traditionally speaking, again, I know I'm speaking in generalizations, women can be more open-hearted, where men have had to protect themselves for good reason. For good reason. So this is my friend Vanessa. Vanessa is my co-host on BG5. She's my good bud. So this is her Chiron. I just give you a sense. This is these kind of major milestones. This is just looking at her themes. So she had some very specific learning education themes for her 2343 efficiency, 60, the force 63 logical, and 2145 management, which is one of the ultimate tribal leadership strengths. All right. This is the finish here. Difference between annual and larger cycles. Annual cycles more complex. We go into all of the details for that. You may do 2 sessions for an annual cycle with a client. Whereas with the bigger ones, we keep it shorter, but we give the big overarching highlights. With larger cycles, our focus is on purpose and potential. Why this is important is essentially what I did with Kristen. We can do the same thing with either the annual, the daily, the annual, or the bigger cycle. It helps people create and know signposts. This is what I should be on the lookout for. It can also be very affirming. If you're on the right path, great. But it's also the signpost. If you feel and see this, you're not on it. You're kind of off track. You're lost here. And it's also really helpful to understand what you need to learn and the roles you take on. All right, folks. Yes. Oh, excuse me. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to share? I haven't been able to look at the chat too much. Joshua, this is me now. Stay home dad, losing myself. 4-6 projector. Yeah, I hear you, man. Corinne says, I'm in your Uranus opposition. That's the 40-year milestone. We'll admit that it's way worse than my Saturn. That can happen. Yes, that can so happen. So my Saturn was, I think we were the opposite. We were the opposite, Corinne. Mm. Uh, you could create a daily chart using your free chart generator. Yep. So when you create a free chart, you would create it for that day, and you would just look at the personality side. That's all you would look at. Uh, and if you have My Body Graph, you can get a really inexpensive plan with My Mechanics, or I guess My Body Graph. I think the cheapest plan is $6 a month, and you can create charts, so at a really simple level for what's seemingly not too much. In the class, Nanette, I can teach you how to create those charts, the daily charts. It's pretty simple once you understand it. Anything else for anyone? Faraday, nice to see you. Nice to see you. All right, folks, thank you so much. Even though I didn't get to see you personally, I didn't see you on the screen. That's what a webinar is about. It was great to be with you. Thanks for coming and joining us. And if you want to join the cycles class, I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye for now.